and welcome. I am B.K. Tyagi, and today we are going to discuss about the National Science Day. This is the day, means 28 February, when in 1928 for the first time the Indian science came on the world map. That was with the discovery of Raman effect. This was the day when many people in India, you can say there was a synergy when we have many scientists of the same repute and of same caliber, which were doing science and contributing to the fundamental science in case of especially in natural sciences. Since 1987, the National Council for Science and Technology Communication, an agency or a council in Department of Science and Technology, was instrumental in declaring this 28th February as a National Science Day. Since then, this day is being celebrated as a National Science Day to celebrate the science or taking science to the people. Today, to discuss about this, some more about this National Science Day, what is the philosophy, what is the objective, and many more things, we have two very distinguished guests before us. One is Engineer Anuj, who had been the head of National Council for Science and Technology, and you say he was in a way instrumental in declaring this National Science Day as a part of the government policy. And Engineer Anuj is a part of was a part of government machinery who has been instrumental in administration of science. And the second guest is Professor Dhruv Raina, who has been a philosopher and an historian of science and technology, and his main contribution is on domestication of science, especially in during the colonial era. I think I hope we'll have much more information about the National Science Day, and I welcome both of you, sir, here to be part of our program. My first question is to Engineer Sinha. So, what do you mean by National Science Day? Because you had been part of science administration, I think more than 30 years. So, to you, what is a National Science Day?
It was always felt that we need to celebrate science, and we already had many other days which had been designated either internationally or nationally for various specific themes, ideas, and very important events. So, around 1986-87, as you rightly point out, we had proposed that the country should organize National Science Day, and several dates were suggested, and the government approved 28 February as the day because of various factors, as you rightly pointed out. And most important was that an Indian scientist working in India made a phenomenal discovery for which he was recognized with the Nobel Prize in physics, and that I think was felt that this is true and should be a good opportunity to make a higher profile for science. Some of the issues that were striking us at that time was that we need to have more opportunities to discuss science policy. We must talk about access and equity and inclusion. So, the Science Day, the way it was designed then and the way it has evolved over the past now 3 decades is this, that we continue to make an attempt at ensuring that the issues of current interest to the public are brought forward through either lectures, exhibitions, cinemas, shows, or whatever, demonstrations, activities, opportunities for young people, opportunities for senior people to talk about issues that are affecting the society at the present. And that I think is the importance of the National Science Day.
Engineer Arosina, I think that is you can say the official version of National Science Day. Let me ask Professor Rana, what do you think as a science philosopher? What do you mean by if we have to observe or celebrate this the science on a particular day? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think that since it is called the National Science Day, its significance is that of a commemorative event. Commemorating the activities of Indian scientists over a period of time. As you rightly pointed out at the beginning, I mean, the period from the 1920s is a particularly important one in the history of modern sciences in India. When Indian scientists begin to join the global networks of science. It's the beginning of the globalization of science. And Raman's work is taken as an important milestone in experimental physics, but there were also important contributions made in the area of theoretical physics, quantum theory by S.N. Bose, by Meghnad Saha, and a number of others. So what we begin to see is it marks the process of the institutionalization of modern science and the globalization of science. So I think what the National Science Day seeks to do is to commemorate the growth and expansion of science over the last 70 to 80 years. But also more importantly, I don't think the task stops there. The task is to bring the citizenship into the world of science, and say that this is also your world. We live with science and technology all the time, and it's also then to introduce the citizenry into the wonderment and the adventure that science is. And this is done through a series of lectures. The Indian Institute of Science and other important national laboratories and institutes open up their laboratories for students to come and see that how science is actually done, rather than keep it as something very mysterious.
Okay, I think you can say like, or I can say it is more to bridge the gap between science and the public, so that the people.
Interestingly, Tyagiji, this year I'm told that the theme also is science for the people
and people for the science.
For science.
Professor Engineer Arosina, I think I will come back to you. We have to take a small break, and immediately we will be coming back again to you.
ईडी साइंस भारत सरकार के विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी विभाग और दूरदर्शन की संयुक्त परियोजना है। इस परियोजना में सोमवार से शनिवार शाम 5 से 6 बजे तक विज्ञान समर्पित कार्यक्रम के लिए दूरदर्शन के राष्ट्रीय चैनल पर 1 घंटे का समय निर्धारित है। ईडी साइंस भारतीय संस्थानों और विज्ञान की प्रयोगशालाओं में विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी के क्षेत्र में होने वाले नवीनतम विकास और देश व दुनिया के विज्ञान से संबंधित कार्यक्रमों और समाचारों को दिखाएगा। ये कार्यक्रम विज्ञान प्रसार द्वारा कार्यान्वित किया गया है। अधिक जानकारी के लिए कृपया विज्ञान प्रसार की आधिकारिक वेबसाइट www.vigyanprasar.gov.in पर जाएं।
Welcome back, and after the break, let's take our discussion to a next level. This is my curiosity. When we were, under the British rule, when the Raman effect was discovered, I read somewhere that the equipment which he used, it was not costing more than, I think, 500 rupees.
235.
235. I think somewhere it is written. But now, after so much of development, why not we have repeated that success? I think, and it is mentioned in the history that the Raman effect was one of the few experimental physics experiment which got the Nobel Prize in its own because of its merit, and with such a low cost equipment. Why not these kind of successes are repeated again?
No, I think that's because there's been a major transformation in the nature of science. It's not just with the question about Raman. It is often said, in a work by C.P. Snow, that Rutherford did his experiments with candle and sealing wax.
Okay.
It is a metaphorical way of saying that he was building his own equipment in his laboratory. The transformation of science after the end of the Second World War,
Yeah.
we entered a period of big science, big experiments, big money, big equipment. So the question is not that we can repeat that Raman kind of science in that kind of way, because the nature of scientific research itself has changed. Scientific research requires big equipment, big machinery, big money and big manpower. Look at the work which has gone into the Higgs boson, or gravitational wave. Huge teams involving thousands of researchers.
You are saying the whole dimension of doing science has
changed. So it's not
I must come back to Dr. C.V. Raman's work, that even while he was working and making his very keen observations with very low cost equipment, there were other teams in Europe and Russia who were also seized with the same problem and were making observations, particularly Landsberg and Mendelstein in Russia. And they were very close to announcing the same discoveries, which Dr. Raman and his team did. And got their papers published, and that is why the credit for finding out these effects, etc., rests rightly with Dr. Raman. So even at that stage, Professor, there were others who were actually working with more sophisticated equipment. And perhaps were slightly a little late in announcing their observations. So that happens because it's a competitive world. But yes, I fully agree with Professor Dhruv Raina that today science has become much more sophisticated, much more complex, and
competitive.
One does need a lot of sophisticated instruments to be able to pursue good research.
But now the theme of this year, if we look at it, it is like science for the people and people for the science. So what does it mean? Like one side we are saying we have to train more scientific manpower, and other way the science communication. These are two aspects, I think, which are the, you can say, the undercurrent of the theme of this year, or it's something else.
I would like to say this, that there has been, of course, this debate continues for many years, but the past few years, I think it has become more aggressive. That are scientists only doing basic research, or should they be doing use-inspired basic research, where there would be application? And a very famous quadrant has been defined, called as the Pasteur's quadrant, which Professor will probably elaborate more, where they are talking of the work which Niels Bohr was doing, trying to understand the fundamental forces that define the atom and what goes on. It was basic research, whereas Pasteur was working on applying his research. And of course, there's another thing, that like Edison, who would be in the third quadrant, who was using applied technology for a lot of innovations and inventions. And the fourth quadrant is with people who are doing average work, which is neither here nor there. So I think when the theme is science for the people, the idea is that we need to focus more on using use-inspired work, and ensuring that research comes out more directly in the field of health, agriculture, social science, whatever, climate change, directly affecting people.
But still we find a lot of gap, when we say the science for the people. Now the question is as Anuj Sinha is saying, whether it is if we should do the fundamental research or the applied or application based research. When we say the science for the people, where we should focus on?
Professor Tyagi, on this issue, I don't think there should be a dichotomy where one has to choose one over the other. Because as we have seen as students of historians of histories of science, you cannot do what you call applied research without at the same time making
Basic,
contributions, because the applied research is platformed on developments in fundamental research. And very often what happens is that very often, frequently enough, real life situations may require us to go back and do fundamental research before you can solve. I think that relationship is a deeply entangled one, and we should not argue one in favor of the other. The other, as my own teachers, one of them from the Institute of Science, Bangalore, used to say, that actually as part of the entire funding for science, basic research doesn't take up more than 10 to 15%.
Yes.
So why are we playing this game against the other? I think this is not. But coming back to the question for science for the people, I think there are three dimensions we need to look at. And people for science, both. It's an interrelated problem. On the one hand, when we are saying science for the people, we are basically, we can talk of three levels. The first level is the level of democratization. And basically, the role of the state and the role of institutes is to take science to the people so that they can participate in the reception of and the transformation of science in their own life, to critically examine the science that is given to them. All right. The second aspect, and that's a problem which all nations are facing today, is the declining enrollment in the sciences. And because of the declining enrollment in the sciences, the system of production of scientific knowledge may get compromised. So the thing is, we have to reintroduce back to citizens the wonder that is science, that science is an adventure, all right? And then the third aspect is what we're talking about, science for the people. I mean, the question of drinking water in the villages of India. The question of the spread of tuberculosis and new contagious diseases, the question of climate change. All right. Now, these are issues that influence all people equally, but especially those people who have no access to the market. All right. Now, by and large, that research gets done, which is enrolled into the market demand model.
Yes.
But the question of science for the people is, what do we do for the requirements of those people who are not part of this? So I think these are the three dimensions of science for the people. And the people you can only have people for science after these three aspects are addressed in significant measure.
But this the declining interest in science, especially the basic science, is not our only Indian problem. It's I think across the globe.
I said it. It's a global problem.
Yeah. So what is the reason for that? Are we our faith or our trust in science has been lost, or it's something else? No doubt, one is the economic factor, the commercialization, or you can say the management is being paid more as compared to the generator of knowledge, or the manager of knowledge is being paid better
more
than
the generator.
Yeah. So how we resolve this, this issue? Otherwise, because now if we see this liberalization, globalization, most of the things, the indicator is in terms of economics only. If I am getting less than by doing work in lab, then why should I go? How we can
See, the declining enrollment in sciences, the way I have understood the literature and the public understanding of science, has been precipitated due to a variety of factors. All right. At one level, the number of job opportunities and fruitful job opportunities in a variety of fields has opened up. You raise the question of loss of faith in science. I don't think there's a question of loss of faith in science. It's just that because science is embroiled in so many controversies due to internal differences in the world of science, which must exist, people don't see science as something which is all about certitude. They see science also has a controversial aspect, but that I do not think has contributed to the declining enrollment in science. My feeling is that given the kind of society we are becoming, a knowledge society in a way, the number of people who are coming into the pure sciences is not commensurate with the requirements of the sustenance of the production of a knowledge society.
Oh, that means like we need more and more trained scientific manpower. Dr. Rana, we'll come back to you again. I think we have to take a short break, and after the break our discussion will continue.
टीडी साइंस भारत सरकार के विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी विभाग और दूरदर्शन की संयुक्त परियोजना है। इस परियोजना में सोमवार से शनिवार शाम 5 से 6 बजे तक विज्ञान समर्पित कार्यक्रम के लिए दूरदर्शन के राष्ट्रीय चैनल पर 1 घंटे का समय निर्धारित है। टीडी साइंस भारतीय संस्थानों और विज्ञान की प्रयोगशालाओं में विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी के क्षेत्र में होने वाले नवीनतम विकास और देश व दुनिया के विज्ञान से संबंधित कार्यक्रमों और समाचारों को दिखाएगा। ये कार्यक्रम विज्ञान प्रसार द्वारा कार्यान्वित किया गया है। अधिक जानकारी के लिए कृपया विज्ञान प्रसार की आधिकारिक वेबसाइट www.vigyanprasar.gov.in पर जाएं।
Welcome back, and after this break we'll again continue our discussion. Now, like, what message we can give, because this is science for the people and people for the science. That means what message we can give to the people who are for science. That means the scientist or the knowledge generator
Tyagi,
of
I want to say, when we say people for science, I think we are also including not just scientists but also the common man. And
True.
We also therefore talking of our leaders,
Yeah.
people who represent the various constituencies, whether it is at the village level, block level, district level, or the state or the national level. And in our country we have had, right from the time when the science policy resolution was discussed, debated, adopted in 1958, the people through our representatives have been discussing, deliberating, concerned about how science should reach the people outside, and that is how the science policy resolution was drafted and adopted. Similarly, the technology policy statement was drawn up in 1983, or the science, technology and policy initiative was drawn up in 2003. So people through our representatives have been concerned about science, and therefore when we say people for science, I think it's perfectly there, and they are concerned, and therefore they keep on raising these issues, giving us broad parameters, telling us how they would like to see science reach out, and that I think is something unique for our country. It has happened. It has not happened in other democracies across the world.
what Professor Rena you have to say about it.
Yeah, you know what, I mean, I'd like to take up one point which Dr. Sinha just raised. And that is, what do we mean when we are talking about people for science?
Yeah.
And he's quite right in saying that we are just not talking about people coming into science to be scientists.
Yeah.
All right. But what we need to tell them is that there are hard problems in the sciences which have to be solved to improve people's lives. At the same time, there are equally exciting problems in all the sciences which are of a fundamental nature. And careers in these two are worthwhile. They are full of excitement and they are worthy of pursuing. That's the first part. The second aspect of people for science is, I think, that we are now globally, and I think we must also now begin to think beyond the nation in the sense, because problems of climate change and these kinds of problems we are facing are not national problems.
Yeah.
They are global problems. We are connected. All right. And on this count, when we look at science, then we should see that science has moved into so many sectors of society, and we need quality science percolating down so that people who work with, say, citizen support groups, people who work on water, farmers who work on soil, all these people have access to science in solving their day-to-day problems at the field. Science has to percolate down to that level. So in that sense, I mean, NGOs, people science movements, all right, environmental movements, all these people are also producers of knowledge.
Yes.
True.
They are also knowledge producers. And we are talking about their science and science with them.
But now let's come to the like connecting people with the science, because still that gap exists. And Engineer Arun Sinha and Professor you both of has work was for science communication. So how we can no doubt there are 4 agencies, government agencies which has been instrumental in taking science or popularizing science among the people. In change scenario, what kind of new initiative or strategies or planning we should do so that the actual science, which is what we are producing, the knowledge in the lab, it should reach to the people. So how the science communication strategies now should be devised, especially when we have this
very interesting challenge.
Yeah.
Because a lot of scientists are most comfortable talking to other specialists in their own area of specialization.
With their peer groups.
With the peer group, because they use the same terminology, they understand each other, there's a lot of bonhomie, but for them to be able to reach out to other than their own specializations and of course to the common man calls for a specific skill and of course a lot of effort. So we need to therefore provide more opportunities. And National Science Day is one such opportunity that was created 30 years back, where specialists talk about their area of work to non-specialists. And I think there should be more such things coming through. An effort was made at the Indian Science Congress, 105th Indian Science Congress, where they said that every scientist should spend about 100 hours a year talking to students. So if such efforts are made, definitely there will be more outreach of the work that scientists do to people who would be perhaps inspired, people who would be able to connect, people who would be able to tell their problems and take their issues to the specialists, and that extension work would start. The other is, I think, extension or communication is a specialization by itself, and to accept that is important, because it is not as if everybody can become a good science communicator.
Hope you like our this show, and that's all for now, and you can send your feedback about the program on given email, and we will come back to you with equally interesting topic in our next episode. Till then, goodbye.